Hello, welcome to Indus News Live with me, Osman Lone. Well, we begin this news hour with our top story, and that's Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan saying his country has always shown hospitality to refugees and hosts over 3 million Afghanistanis. Speaking on India's controversial citizenship law at the first ever UN Global Refugee Forum in Geneva, he said the world should take notice of what's happening in India. Earlier, UN Chief Antonio Guterres said more international cooperation is needed than ever to address the refugee crisis. The forum is the first major meeting on refugees in the 21st century and is being jointly hosted by the UNHCR and Switzerland. The other governors of the forum are Turkey, Costa Rica, Ethiopia and Germany.
The most important thing which the world needs to understand is that the professed aim is to change the demography of Kashmir from a Muslim majority to a Muslim minority. Now, if this is what the professed aim is, we are likely to have another refugee crisis. A refugee crisis that would dwarf other crises.
Well, Amnesty International India has slammed police brutality against students protesting against the controversial citizenship law. In a statement, Amnesty said brutal action against the students of Jamia Millia University and Aligarh Muslim University must end. The rights body also said the Indian government must investigate allegations of police sexually harassing female students. Hearing pleas seeking an investigation into police action against students, the Indian Supreme Court asked petitioners to approach the High Courts. Meanwhile, violent protests have continued against the controversial citizenship law. Demonstrations were held in Delhi, Mumbai, Hyderabad, Varanasi, Ahmedabad, Lucknow and Kolkata. Members of nearly 18 student unions gathered outside the Mumbai University to protest against the act. Police say over 3,000 protesters have been detained in the northeastern state of Assam. The protests left 6 people dead in Assam before spreading to other parts of the country.
The police started beating us and abusing us in a very communal way. I believe in a certain faith. So I said, Ya Allah. And they started saying, you guys are terrorists.
We are protesting here right now. We are protesting against the bill which the government has passed, which is discriminatory for one particular community. It's against the Muslims. It's against the ethos of India. It's against the secular ideas of India.
Well, in another development, India has slipped to 112th globally in terms of gender gaps amid widening disparity in women's health and security. A report by the World Economic Forum says the country has moved down in rank from 108, which it held last year. The Gender Gap report ranks India below Bangladesh on 50th, Nepal on 101 and Sri Lanka on 102 and China on 106th. It said economic opportunities for women are extremely limited in India at 35.4%. It also said the condition of women in large fringes of India's society is precarious and the economic gap runs particularly deep. The report said Indian women account for only 14% of leadership roles and 30% of professional and technical workers. Moving on, the UN Security Council will meet today to discuss the worsening situation in Indian-occupied Kashmir. The council has been convened at China's request for the first time since a similar gathering in August. The meeting is being held after Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi wrote to the Security Council about a potential escalation in tensions. In a note to the UNSC, China said it made the request due to the gravity of the situation in the region. It said Beijing would like to echo Pakistan's request and seek a briefing of the Council on the circumstances in Kashmir. In August, India revoked the decades-old special status of Kashmir with an amendment in its constitution. New Delhi's curfew and communications blackout in the valley have entered their 135th day. Well, for more on this story, we're joined by Mr. Salman Bashir, a former Foreign Secretary and High Commissioner of Pakistan in India. Mr. Bashir, thank you for your time and joining us on Indus News. So, China has approached the UNSC once again to discuss the situation in Indian-occupied Kashmir. Tell us, what's the importance of today's session?
Well, my understanding is that, of course, the Kashmir issue has been on the agenda. There was, as you know, a consultative meeting of the council some time ago. The situation has not improved, actually worsened. I think what is really the purpose for this meeting, which we hope will take place, although I understand there are still consultations going on in this respect. But the key thing is the situation on the line of control, which has been violated time and again by the Indians. In recent days, it has, there's an added ominous dimension because the Indian army posture on the line of control is now alarming. It is offensive. And the Foreign Minister of Pakistan has written to the UN Secretary General and the Security Council that there is real apprehension that the Indians may be up to some sort of misadventure across the LOC. So what is being sought is a proper briefing by the UN Military Observers Group of India and Pakistan to the Council. It is important to sort of stem this thing before it erupts in a manner that becomes uncontainable. And I think that is what the consultations in New York are about currently.
Mr. Bashir, do you think today's session can help raise the pro-Kashmir argument at international level and pressurize India into resolving these outstanding issues?
Well, that is certainly the hope of Pakistan. It is certainly the hope of the Kashmiris. It is the hope of every right-minded person who has had faith in the UN Charter and the UN system. But we know from the reality, the fact is that, of course, it adds. The profile is already there. I mean, the profile of the issue as far as the international community is concerned is very much there. But the effectiveness, I mean, the question is how effective can the Council be? It can only at this point in time, I think, exercise some sort of a moral influence to restrain Indians and to, the curfew, the lockdown in Kashmir is now that's 130 days, so it is just getting from bad to worse.
Salman, thank you for your insight. That was Salman Bashir, former Foreign Secretary and High Commissioner of Pakistan in India. Now, in other news, in Pakistan, a special court has convicted former President Pervez Musharraf of subverting the constitution by imposing emergency on November the 3rd, 2007. The court sentenced Mr. Musharraf to death. A three-member bench announced the verdict after hearing final arguments today. General Musharraf seized power in a military coup in 1999. He's rejected charges against him, and Musharraf is currently living in Dubai after being allowed to leave the country for medical treatment 3 years ago. Well, US Defense Secretary Mark Esper says he wants to cut troop numbers in Afghanistan with or without an Afghan peace deal. Esper says the head of the NATO mission in Afghanistan, Austin Miller, is confident that he can go down to lower number of troops. According to US officials, the Trump administration is expected to announce the withdrawal of about 4,000 troops from Afghanistan this week. US Senator Lindsey Graham says Pakistan can accelerate the peace process in Afghanistan. He also backed reducing the number of US troops in the country.
Relationship that President Trump has with Pakistan could change behavior in a way that would really accelerate the chance for peace. We all know that if Pakistan applied more pressure on the Taliban, it would be enormously helpful to resolving the conflict here.
Well, 10 people have been killed in an IED blast in Afghanistan's eastern coast province. The Interior Ministry says members of the same family were traveling when their car hit a roadside bomb. The ministry said 3 children and 2 women are among the dead in Aishar district. Officials said the victims had been driving a large station wagon type vehicle. The ministry blamed the Taliban for the attack, but no one has yet claimed responsibility. Russia and China have proposed easing UN sanctions against North Korea. In a draft resolution, both countries suggested relaxing the curbs if Pyongyang commits to Security Council resolutions on denuclearization. The two countries argue that a relaxation of some sanctions will encourage the North to resume denuclearization talks. Meanwhile, the US has dismissed the proposal, calling it a premature relief. Officials said the UN should reject the proposal as North Korea is threatening to conduct an escalated provocation and refusing to meet in the talks. Earlier, President Donald Trump said he will be disappointed if something was in the works in North Korea. He said the US was watching activities in the country very closely. Well, the United Nations says it has no choice but to keep shipping humanitarian aid across Syria's borders. In a statement, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said the bloc didn't have an alternative means to reach people in need. A report submitted to the UN Security Council said over 6 million people received food and medical treatment in the country. Security Council members have proposed a 1-year renewal of the aid operation as its mandate expires on the 10th of January. But Russia wants a 6-month renewal that ignores Guterres' assertion regarding cross-border assistance. Moscow has also proposed the closing of 2 of the current 4 entry points to Syria used for aid. Well, we'll be back with more news from around the world right after this short break. Hello again, it's good to have you back. Now, 3 people have died as tornadoes wreaked havoc across the southeastern United States. A couple was killed in northern Alabama, while an elderly woman lost her life in Louisiana. Officials say the storms tore roofs off buildings, splintered trees, and pulled down power lines. They say the most damage was reported in Alabama, Louisiana, and Texas. A power outage tracking website said almost 30,000 people suffered electricity failures. More rain and wind are expected today as the storms push off into southeastern Georgia, Florida, and both Carolinas.
The magistrate hereby requests the continuation of the trial to these gentlemen in the ordinary court, and I want to put it to a vote. There has to be justice here one day.
14 people have been killed in a coal mine blast in southwest China. Government officials say 2 miners are still trapped underground after the explosion at the mine in Guizhou province. Officials say 7 workers were airlifted to safety after the accident and rescue work is continuing. The accident is the latest in a series of mining incidents in China. Earlier on Saturday, flooding in a mine in Sichuan province killed 5 and trapped 13 miners underground. An Australian court has sentenced 2 brothers to a total of 76 years in prison for planning to blow up an Etihad Airways flight. The 2 men were convicted of planning a terrorist attack on a flight from Sydney to Abu Dhabi in July 2017. The New South Wales Supreme Court sentenced Khalid Khayat to 40 years in prison with no parole until 2047. His brother Mahmoud Khayat was sentenced to 36 years with no possibility of parole until 2044. Khalid and Mahmoud Khayat were arrested during police raids in Sydney. The police say high-grade explosives used to make the bomb were flown from Turkey as part of a plot by ISIS. Two men have been arrested for smuggling 645 kilograms of ecstasy hidden inside hundreds of aluminium barbecues. Police say it's the biggest shipment seized in Australia this year. Officials said a 30-year-old man from Queensland and a 33-year-old Canadian national had been charged. Authorities made the arrest after a 6-month investigation that also involved Cyprus and the United Kingdom. Police found 200 aluminium barbecues with false base plates, concealing multiple packages of the illegal drug. Now, in other news, a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket has launched a massive satellite into orbit from Florida, and that's to provide communications in the Asia-Pacific region. The rocket carried the satellite into the air above Cape Canaveral. After a successful launch, the Falcon 9 booster came back to Earth, landing on a drone ship in the Atlantic Ocean. The satellite reached geostationary transfer orbit minutes later. Recovery boats were deployed off the coast to catch the two halves of the fairing, but narrowly missed them. The company said a team is working to recover them for potential use on a future flight. In Peru, Edgar and Dominic are the latest conjoined twins to be surgically separated. The twins have arrived home after recovering at a hospital in the San Borja district of Lima. More in this report.
A Peruvian mother of conjoined twins is celebrating a Christmas miracle this year. Her babies came home for the first time after going through a successful 18-hour operation. Cases like theirs are extremely rare, occurring once every 200,000 births.
This is the first case in the country with Siamese twins that were born joined by this part that are Chiapogas twins, which was achieved through the work of the entire team. It's a success and also a miracle.
The surgery involved more than 40 medical specialists, including pediatric surgeons, radiologists.
It's a Christmas miracle. I spent last Christmas hospitalized from the cesarean, and them as well. We did not spend it together, and this Christmas I am going to spend it with my family and with them. And it's their first year. That was my Christmas gift. I wanted them to be here with me, separated.
Research shows 40 to 60% of conjoined twins arrive stillborn, and about 35% live only one day. The mortality rates for twins who do live and then undergo separation vary, depending on the type of connection and the organs they share.
Now in business news, Japan says it will continue a dialogue to resolve trade issues with South Korea. Senior Japanese and South Korean trade officials met for the first time since Tokyo imposed controls on Seoul's exports in July. Japan's Trade Minister Hiroshimi Kajiyama said a better understanding of bilateral management of export control systems has been reached. He said the next round of trade talks between the two countries will be held in Seoul in the near future.
We were also able to discuss about updating and improving each country's export control system. In order to resolve our issues, we hope to continue our dialogue and communication on export controls. We are planning to hold the next meeting for trade talks in Seoul in the near future.
Stock markets across Europe are trading lower following a worldwide rally on the back of a Phase 1 trade deal between the US and China. Investors are treading carefully over Britain's trade deal with the EU ahead of a Brexit deadline. Frankfurt's DAX and CAC 40 in Paris is trading fractionally lower. London's FTSE 100 is trading marginally lower as Unilever shares dropped more than 5.5%. British banks RBS, Lloyds and Barclays each shed over 2.5%. In Asia, trade deal optimism, positive economic signals in China sent shares to an 18-month high. The Shanghai Composite led the gains to close over 1% higher. Hong Kong's Hang Seng gained over 1% as shares of digital app Meitu rocketed over 8%. Seoul's Kospi also traded over 1% higher as Samsung Electronics shares surged over 3%.